Welcome to the first monthly reading wrap-up on the channel. The Karl limited editions from Hotterscope just dropped and I'm in a Karl mood today, so this is why this intro is like this. Okay, in this video, I am going to talk about all of the books that I read in the month of July 2024. Just so you know, this is going to be in chronological order. So I'm going to start with the first book that I read in July, and then I'm going to finish with the last one that I read. So without any further ado, let's get started. I have started the month of July by reading Down the Drain by Julia Fox, and this was such a slay. In the wise words of Charlie XCX, this is so Julia. This is so Julia. Even from the first pages of this book, even before the first chapter for the dedication pages, she says, identities have been changed to protect the innocent and the guilty. To my dad, thank you for pushing me to write, even when I struggle to find the words. Thank you for the mistakes you've made, which I turned into art. No matter where life's journey takes me, for better or for worse, all roads lead back to you. But please, whatever you do, do not read this book. This is for the dreamers and the delinquents. Julia pours her soul into this book, and you can clearly tell that she has a passion for writing. This book reads like literary fiction in the best way possible. As I was reading this book, I constantly had to flip to the cover and look at it just to remind myself that this is not literary fiction, this is actually someone's life. And even though the shit that she has gone through is absolutely insane, I am so happy that now she's well and we are living in a world where Julia is blessing us with her art. In this book, Julia is talking about her childhood, her rocky relationship with her parents, her female friendships, her abusive relationship with her drug-dealing boyfriend, and it is just so endearing to read about someone who went through so much and came to the other side winning at life, winning at being this person who is able to inspire and to put herself out there. I wanted to read what she says about shoplifting. She says, "We don't have a lot of money, so if I wanted something, I knew the only way to get it was by taking it. Once, my mom caught me red-handed. After a trip to the supermarket, I climbed into the backseat and began discreetly pulling all my new acquisitions out of my pants. Among them was a jumbo pack of Bazooka bubblegum. Just as I was about to pop another piece of the yummy pink bubblegum into my mouth, she spun around and caught me in the act. I braced for the impact, but to my surprise, she asked me for a piece of gum, turned on the radio, and drove home." And a couple of pages after this, she says, "I know stealing is wrong, but the security that it gives me is priceless. My parents' constant arguing over money has left an indelible mark on my psyche. I vow that I will never be like them. When I grow up, I'm going to be rich." Also, another passage that I wanted to read to you, in this she's talking about her passion for writing. She says, "After school, I retreat to the solitude of my bathroom to let the ink flow onto the page, revealing the pain and emotions I had buried deep inside. Each stroke of my pen feels like a release, like a weight being lifted off my shoulders. I write about the suffocating feeling of insignificance and the constant battle to find my place into this world. I write about how lonely I am and how everyone always leaves me, leading me to put on a facade of toughness and aggression. I write about the urge to compare myself to others and the resulting feelings of inadequacy. I fantasize about what life could have been like had I been born into a normal, loving family and all the ways in which I would be different." This is on her drug-dealing boyfriend. She says, "I made up my mind then and there that I will no longer be afraid of him. I'm not going to let him have that over me. I'm not going to give him the power to continue ruining my life. I'm not going to open his letters, answer his calls, or talk to any of my friends who keep tabs on me for him. I'm getting my tattoo covered as soon as I get out. I am no longer his property." On Fame, she says, "Everyone I hang out with goes by nicknames, gang names, or tag names. I realize I don't know anyone's real name, but they all know mine. Julia Fox, they yell as they ride past me on their bikes and when they see me walk into a crowded room. My name and likeness quickly permeate the city when I pose semi-nude for a prominent street artist. Soon my painted body is splashed across canvases all over West Broadway. I still can't legally drink, but my image is now on display in nightclubs all over Manhattan. It even makes a cameo in the popular reality TV spin-off show of the Ravenswood Hotel. And also, she is talking about her times as a dominatrix and how she applied for that. She's writing in Chapter 6 Mastermind. I go on Craigslist and I already know where to look. I scroll down to the bottom of the page. Adult gigs. I scan the job postings. Prostitute, stripper, slutty assistant, prostitute, slutty maid, prostitute, prostitute. Until I read the words dominatrix, dungeon hiring. No sex, no nudity, no experience necessary. I click on the listing and I'm met with instructions. 1. Send in a recent full body picture. 2. Write a quick bio with age, height, weight, and level of experience. 3. Describe in detail most sadistic sexual fantasy. Easy. I pull what I think is a good photo of my Facebook page and begin tapping away at the keyboard. I don't have experience as a dominatrix, but I certainly have some experience in hating men. And just to kind of get you an overview on what this book is about, I want to read a passage that I think summarizes perfectly this book. She says, sometimes you have to say fuck it and throw your life down the drain just to see where you'll come out on the other side. The most profound beauty emerges from the ashes of destruction, and by that I mean that sometimes you have to burn your life to the ground in order to experience the life that is truly meant for you. It is in letting go that we are forced to carve our own destiny. We must be able to relinquish all we once held dear if we are holding on with fear. If you believe in the power within yourself, anything is possible. Because the truth is, anyone who is someone first started out as a delusional dreamer. I was ridiculed for being different and for doing whatever I had to do to survive. But now, everyone is wearing latex. She's talking in the last or the second to last chapter in this book about her brief fling with he who shan't be named, but she's not actually using his name in this book, which I think is very smart on her part, because in this way it's kind of like she's taking away his power over her. And even though she didn't sign the NDA that his PR team kind of forced her to sign, it's a very interesting stylistic choice that she made while writing this. It is, in Julia's own words, a masterpiece.
So I don't like to speak of things before they're finished, but it's so far a masterpiece, if I do say so myself.
This is Down the Drain. Next up, I have read Just by Looking at Him by Ryan O'Connell, and honestly, I wish I didn't look at him and I didn't look at this book, because it was just a mess. I don't know if it's the writing style or I simply didn't get the idea of the main character, but it just was a struggle bus. It was very hard to read at times just because how quirky and relatable the main character is trying to be, and in doing that is just not achieving anything because he just comes across as annoying, to be honest. This book is following a queer TV writer who is just struggling with his disability and self-acceptance and addiction and all of those things, but it just comes across as annoying and entitled and just whiny all the time. There are specific things that just rub me the wrong way. For example, in the book, every single time he's buying something, he is telling us how much he spent on that specific thing. And yeah, I get it. You can afford expensive things. Like, no one cares about that, right? It just, I don't know. Please let me know in the comments if you read this book. What did you think of it? Because it was not for me. A thing that I appreciated is this discussion on disability and self-acceptance, but it was just not enough. Honestly, if it wasn't for the pretty cover, I don't think I would have ever read this book, but yeah, this is just by looking at him. Next up, I have read Every Time I Go on Vacation Someone Dies by Mack. This is supposed to be a cozy mystery, and I think it's intended to be a series, but unfortunately I just didn't get the main character. I just thought it was a bit boring at times. We are following this murder mystery writer as she is trying to come up with an idea to kill off her main character for the 10th novel that she's writing, and as she tries to come up with ideas to kill off this character who is based on an actual person that she had a thing with in the past, we find out that that specific person might be involved with mafia and they are wanting him dead. It sounds good because that's why I picked up the book, but I just don't think it was that well executed. The writing style felt very distracting at times, and one of my biggest pet peeves is when authors are using footnotes when they shouldn't use them. And this book has excessive footnotes. Every single thought that the character has could be a footnote, and to me that's just very distracting. It might be because I read it on my Kobo, and with e-readers it's not that easy to access the footnotes, but I just don't think it was necessary in the context of the book. It's true that the character is actually telling us in a footnote that she always wanted to use footnotes in her novels, so I guess that's the explanation, but to me it just didn't really make sense, and it was, as I said, a bit distracting, and I feel like I couldn't enjoy the book because of this. But if you like cozy mysteries, maybe give this one a go. This is Every Time I Go on Vacation Someone Dies by Mack. Next up, I have read A Tempest of Tea by Hafsah Faizal. This is kind of in the same genre of Six of Crows, Crooked Kingdom, Five Broken Blades by Mike Warland, but I feel like in this book the characters were not as strong as I wished for them to be. We are following Artie, who is here on the cover, and she's working at this tea house by day, but by night the tea house is transformed into this blood house because in this world we have vampires and they are selling fresh blood to the vampires. But that's illegal because vampires are kind of ostracized in this world. I know this might sound weird, but I feel like we didn't get a lot of the vampires in this book. I just wish to see more of what they can do, their powers, stuff like that. And I get that the main focus of the book is the heist that they want to do. Basically, the tea house is in danger and Artie has to come up with this plan in order to retrieve the king's ledger, and in order to be able to do that, she has to unite these outcasts to form a team and retrieve this ledger, and things kind of go from here. This is also going to be a series, so some things are concluded in this book, but obviously a lot of other things are left open for the next books to tackle. So yeah, this was definitely good. It was not as good as I would want it to be, but it was still enjoyable. I had a great time reading this, and if you wish to pick it up, you might enjoy it. This is A Tempest of Tea by Hafsah Faizal. Next up, I have read Bride by Ali Hazelwood, and this book felt like reading fanfic on AO3 in 2015 in the best way possible. We are following Misery, who is a peanut butter loving hacker who's also a vampire, and she's kind of forced into a marriage with Lo, I think it's his name. And Lo is the alpha of his pack of werewolves, and he's also an architect. So you can already tell by this description that this is a quirky, very self-aware book. It's not trying to be anything that's not. I feel like everything is very on the nose and it's purposely done so. The love story, I'm like, whatever. But I really liked the relationships between Misery and her best friend slash sister. I enjoyed the relationship forming between Low and Misery, even though I'm not big on romances, but that's to be expected with this sort of book. Yeah, I just thought it was really well done, and honestly, for a paranormal romance, I enjoyed it so much more than I thought I would. Also, thank you, Ali Hazelwood, for teaching me about nodding. That was interesting. This is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. Next up, another book about vampires. I have read Carmilla, the First Vampire. This is a graphic novel and it is set in the 1990s, I want to say, in New York. All of these queer women are being murdered and no one seems to care about them. This is inspired by Chinese mythology. I don't want to say too much about this book because it's pretty short, and this is also a part of a series, so I assume more books will come out. So yeah, this was Carmilla, the Lost Vampire. Next up, we have The English Understand Wool by Helen DeWitt. This is a very short book about this girl who is 17, I want to say, and she's describing all of these things that her mother used to do, and we don't really understand why in the beginning, but later on we find out that her parents disappeared, and we kind of go from there. This is very short, but for a book this short, I think it achieves so much. This is just a commentary on the publishing industry and how authors are more often than not ripped off and exploited by the industry. I really like this one, the idea of it and how it was done. I want to read more from Helen DeWitt. I know she has another book that's called The Lost Samurai, and that was really popular a while ago, so I want to read that one as well at some point. This is The English Understand Wool. Another short book that I read in the month of July is Now Go on Grief and Studio Ghibli by Karl Thomas Smith. In my mind, this is more of an essay on grief in the context of the Studio Ghibli movies. One thing that I really appreciate about this book is how the author is portraying his own experiences with grief and how he dealt with that. The part on the Studio Ghibli, I find it to be a bit repetitive at times, and the plots of the movies, I don't think they should have been explained as much as they were. The discourse on grief and on pain and how we more often than not have to deal with that at our own pace and just try to learn something from it, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to experience happiness in our life. It was very touching, and I underlined a lot from this book. This was Now Go on Grief and Studio Ghibli. Next up, I have finally read Heather Fawcett's Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Faeries, and my god, this is in the same tier with the Folk of the Air trilogy for me. This was so good. We are following Emily Wilde, who is a scholar at Cambridge, and she has to go to this secluded town in order to study the Fae that are living there. She wants to create this all-encompassing encyclopedia of fairies in order for her to be promoted at Cambridge. You are also having I don't know if I should say enemies to lovers or academic rivals. I think it's more so academic rivals. We have a plot of romance, but it's not the main focus of the book. I enjoyed the world building in this book. It's nothing crazy, but the whole backdrop of the snowy mountains and a very small town. It was really cozy, and if you're looking for a book to read in the fall or winter, I would highly recommend this one. The vibes in this one are just immaculate. I know this book is very popular, but I think it's popular for a reason because it does everything so well. This is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Faeries by Fawcett. Next up, I have read 2 graphic novels. I have read The Tea Dragon Society and The Tea Dragon Festival. I want to say they are the first 2 books in the Tea Dragon Society series, trilogy. I don't know what it is yet. But in this world, we have these tea dragons who, instead of having horns, have tea leaves on them. In these books, we are following Greta. Actually, no, in the first book, we are following Greta, who is discovering a lost tea dragon in the marketplace. So she decides to take him to the tea house, and she's befriending the owners, and the things are kind of going from there. We have a lot of queer characters in these novels, and it is just a cute story. Slight intermission. I was editing this video and I realized I forgot to talk about this book. I also read it in July, and this is More Days at the Morisaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yagisawa. This is the sequel to the More Days at the Morisaki Bookshop book, and this sequel was a disappointment for me personally. The first one, I just felt it had such a charm and a soul to it, but this one kind of felt lackluster. In the first one, we are following Takako, who is just trying to put her life together. She broke up with her boyfriend and she didn't really know what to do in her life. She is in her early 20s and she's trying to just figure out how to navigate her adulthood. So that was happening in the first book. In this one, it was just, we were following Takako, but we didn't really do much with it. I don't know, I couldn't connect with this one, and I'm so sad about it because I thought the first one was great at what it was trying to achieve, but this sequel, it was just not great in my opinion. There are things that are happening towards the end of the book, and the major thing that's kind of like the ending is something that I thought about even when reading the first book. I thought that that's going to be incorporated into that book, and I honestly think that it would have worked so much better if the first book would have been like, I don't know, 50 pages longer, and we would just incorporate the last 50 pages of this book into that one. I think it would have been better, but you know, that's only my opinion. So this is More Days at the Morisaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yagisawa. Now back to the video. Next up, I have read the Hunger Games trilogy, and honestly, I am sick of talking about these books because I have filmed a video on this of me reading the Hunger Games trilogy for the first time in 2024, and that video turned out to be an hour and 15 minutes or something. It took me an insane amount of time to edit, and I heard myself talk for like hours on end. So if you want to know my thoughts on these 3 books, go watch that video that's up on my channel. But to give you an idea on what I think about these books, I love them so much, and I cannot believe I waited so long to read them. But these are definitely top tier. And last but not least, I have finally read Bunny by Mona Awad. If you would ask me what I think about this book and what it is about, couldn't tell you. Couldn't tell you a single thing, but I love this book so much. The more time goes by, the more I think about this book and I interpret it in slightly different ways. As I was reading it, I had all of these theories on what is happening and kind of what's the meaning of what's happening, but we don't really know. I have finished the book and I still don't know what was happening, and I think that's the beauty of it. It can mean so many things for so many people. It is a satire on dark academia and this whole elitism. It has a pretentious writing style. In the beginning, I didn't really get why it was written like this, but the more I read it, the more I realized like, oh, this is supposed to be like this because it's mocking academia in general. In this book, we are following Samantha, who is part of this scholarship at a university. She is doing a graduate program, I think, on writing. She's participating in this workshop with these other girls who are rich and are friends with each other. They have a clique of their own and she's very drawn to them. And one day they invite her to their smut salon, and the smut salon is not what you would think a smut salon is. Things are escalating from there. You don't really know what's real, what's, only in our main character's mind and what is not. They call each other bunnies, and at times the dialogue is very misleading because they talk with each other as Bunny do this and Bunny do that. Oh, I love you, Bunny, blah blah blah. And you don't really know who's talking, which again is done on purpose. It is so, I don't even know what to say. It was unlike anything else I've read so far. This makes me very excited for Mona Awad's other book. It's called Rouge. I have it on my Kobo and I have not read it yet, but I am very excited by that because that's supposed to be a satire on the whole beauty industry. So I'm looking forward to read more books from Mona Awad after my experience with Bunny. Alright, that being said, this is the end of the video. I have to remember to film a thumbnail after this. Thank you so much for watching, for listening to me yap about books for God knows how long. And I guess I'll see you in the next one. Bye everyone!